2, 1.
NBC screws up on a major claim about Michael Cohen. The Huffington Post is pushing fish sex. I am not joking. And we get into the mailbag. This is the Ben Shapiro Show. Yep, things are real weird. We'll get to all of the news in just 1 second. First, I want to say thank you to our sponsors over at the USCCA. So, you like exercising your Second Amendment rights. I know that you do. So, this ad is for you, because how would you like the perfect handgun for self-defense? One that includes a laser built right into the grip. Okay, well, I have some big news for you. You know, I'm a proud supporter of the Second Amendment. Obviously, I believe that law-abiding citizens who are trained in firearms should own firearms and shoot with them and go shooting with them and have them available for self-defense. Well, for a limited time, the USCCA is giving 5 of my listeners $1,000 each to buy a brand new Kimber Micro and extra ammo, which is a pretty awesome deal. There's a reason I'm a USCCA member, aside from the free gun that they are giving away right now. But right now, 5 of you could take home $1,000 for free. Just go to defendmyfamilynow.com to lock in your 5 chances to win. All of this ends on the 25th, so you have to hurry. Remember, they're giving away 5 Kimbers, so you will instantly get 5 free chances to win. Simply go to defendmyfamilynow.com to enter right now. Right now, go to defendmyfamilynow.com, and you have 5 of you have a chance to take home $1,000 each to buy a brand new Kimber Micro and extra ammo, which is awesome. There's a reason that the USCCA is a growing concern. And again, the reason for that is because they don't just provide you education in gun use, they also provide you insurance in case, God forbid, you actually have to pull the trigger on somebody invading your home. And right now, you also have the shot at winning that Kimber. So go to defendmyfamilynow.com for your 5 chances to win. That is defendmyfamilynow.com. Defendmyfamilynow.com. My friends over at the USCCA doing spectacular work. You should go over and join and make sure you register to win those Kimbers. Again, defendmyfamilynow.com. All righty. So yesterday, the big news was that NBC reported that the FBI had actually been wiretapping Michael Cohen. Michael Cohen is, of course, President Trump's personal lawyer. And the idea here was that when they raided Michael Cohen's office, that had come after weeks of them tapping Michael Cohen's phone. This would have been huge news, considering that Michael Cohen, as Trump's personal lawyer, presumably was talking with President Trump. There was also a rumor that they had, well, NBC News reported it just as fact, that Trump had talked with Michael Cohen, which would have meant that the FBI was essentially wiretapping calls on which the President of the United States was present, which would be an amazing, amazing claim. Well, then that sort of fell apart. So NBC News had to retract all of that. They had to issue a correction. They said earlier today, NBC News reported there was a wiretap on the phone of Michael Cohen, President Trump's longtime personal attorney, citing 2 separate sources with knowledge of the legal proceedings involving Cohen. But 3 senior U.S. officials now dispute that, saying the monitoring of Cohen's phones was limited to a log of phone calls known as a pen register, not a wiretap where investigators can actually listen to calls. Okay, well, that's not the same thing at all. Okay, I worked in a prosecutor's office for a summer out here in Los Angeles, and we were able to obtain call records for virtually anybody by subpoenaing the phone company. So all that is just a list of phone numbers. And then you cross-check the phone numbers against the person who has the phone number. That is not the same thing as listening to the contents of the phone call. It's a pretty massive retraction. And again, this is just the latest crazy retraction from the media in a long line of them over the past few weeks. The media have been going so into past few weeks, past few months. The media has been going so insane over Trump. They've been trying their best to take down Trump. Every story is going to be the tick, 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 boom that takes down Trump. Benjamin Wittes, who is a legal reporter, he's constantly using that sort of framework on Twitter. He's constantly saying tick tock, as though it's just a matter of time until the bomb goes off and Trump's presidency is destroyed. And you can see that this is how the media cover these issues. I mean, yesterday there was another story that was just like this. There was a story that was passed around the media, a huge story that Bob Mueller had requested 70 blank subpoenas in the case against Paul Manafort. The supposed idea here is that he was going to subpoena President Trump, that these blank subpoenas show that he was going hard after Paul Manafort. Well, not really. A blank subpoena is just something that you get drawn up. It's the same thing as ordering blue pens. Okay, it's literally a form. So ordering blank subpoenas in a major case is not a shock at all. But the media treated this as though this were a major development. Wow, he ordered a blank subpoena. Under Title IV, Rule 17 of the Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure, the clerk must issue a blank subpoena signed and sealed to the party requesting it, and that party must fill in the blanks before the subpoena is served. So that, of course, does not actually say anything about who's going to be served or the relevance of what is going to be served, but the media went nuts over it anyway. You remember a few weeks ago, McClatchy reported that Michael Cohen, the president's personal lawyer, had in fact visited Prague. The reason that that would make a difference is because there were accusations, as you recall, in the BuzzFeed dossier, in the crazy dossier filled with allegations about Trump stooping Russian prostitutes and such. There are allegations in there that Michael Cohen had visited Prague to coordinate with Russian agents during the election cycle. Well, McClatchy had written an entire story about how after Michael Cohen had denied this and shown his passport that it was not true, that Michael Cohen, in fact, was in Prague, well, they reported that Michael Cohen was in Prague and that he was lying. And then they provided no substantiating evidence. There's not been a second report that confirms that. So there's no more evidence of that than there was when McClatchy claimed it. And yet that story is just sort of sitting out there. This sort of error has become supremely common in the media. ABC News, if you recall, a few months back, had to correct a bombshell story in which they suggested that Michael Flynn had been instructed by Donald Trump to coordinate with the Russians during the campaign. Right? During World News Tonight, ABC News investigative reporter Brian Ross had said the source had provided the initial information for his story, and that initial story prompted the Dow to fall 350 points because there was a suggestion that suddenly the Trump administration was in serious trouble because of the report that said that Flynn was prepared to testify that Trump directed him to make contact with the Russians, which would have been the Trump-Russia collusion case proven to a T. It turns out that Trump instructed Flynn, if anything, to talk to the Russians after Trump had already been elected in December of 2016. Right? ABC News had to retract that report. And you'll recall that CNN had to retract a similar report. Right? CNN had to correct a report about Donald Jr. Connecting with WikiLeaks. And the New York Times reported this back in December of 2017. CNN on Friday corrected an erroneous report that Donald Trump Jr. had received advance notice from the anti-secrecy group WikiLeaks about a trove of hacked documents that it planned to release during last year's presidential campaign. In fact, the email to Mr. Trump was sent a day after the documents stolen from the DNC were made available to the general public. The point that I'm making here is that you can tell the agenda of the media by the errors that the media makes. The media never make errors in the other direction. The media never make errors about Obama to this extent. They never did while he was president. They never make errors about Nancy Pelosi to this extent. They certainly never make errors about Debbie Wasserman Schultz to this extent. And it's a really incredible thing that the media continue to trot out stories without fully vetting them. Now, look, everybody makes mistakes, right? I've made mistakes in my reporting. We've apologized for mistakes at Daily Wire. You know, way back when I wrote for Breitbart News, I ran a report that specifically said that we were reporting a rumor, and the rumor could be not true. It had been sourced highly by a member of the Senate, in which it accused Chuck Hagel of having, who's then the nominee for Secretary of Defense under President Obama, of having coordinated with a group called Friends of Hamas. The group turned out not to exist. It was a bad story. We shouldn't have run it. It was a mistake, right? People make mistakes. I get that people make mistakes. That particular story we had said at the beginning was a rumor anyway, so it wasn't like we were hiding the ball there, but it was still a mistake. We shouldn't have run it in the first place. Okay, that said, the question of which direction to make mistakes reveals your bias. Now, I was biased against Chuck Hagel, so I was probably more likely to believe a bad story about Chuck Hagel. The media proclaim that they are objective. The media proclaim that they are fully just trying to report the news, right? It's not biased. There's no favor for any candidate or any president. That obviously is untrue. When every single error is in one specific direction, you have to acknowledge that something is happening there. And every error with regard to Trump has been against Trump. Every error with regard to President Obama seemed to be in favor of President Obama. The erroneous reporting by the media about President Trump is astonishing and stunning. It does make a certain amount of sense considering the quickness of the news cycle, but all of these big screw-ups are directly playing into President Trump's campaign to suggest that everything is fake news. Now, I'll tell you something I don't like. What I've seen from the right is MSNBC is fake news, CNN is fake news, New York Times is fake news. No, a news story is fake news, right? If the news story is wrong, then it is fake news. To suggest that the entire outlet is fake news throws out the baby with the bathwater. Now, you can say that some publications are more trustworthy than others, right? I've been ripping on InfoWars. I don't think InfoWars is a trustworthy source of information by and large. Okay, and you can take that down the line. You know, I think that CNN is less trustworthy than the Wall Street Journal. I think that I would not put InfoWars and CNN in the same category when it comes to reporting standards, but obviously you can have gradations of how much you trust a particular outlet. But to suggest an entire outlet is fake news and everything they do is fake news, I think is a large-scale mistake. But all you're doing, media, you're playing into President Trump's hands. You're playing directly into President Trump's hands when you jump to the gun and you report things that have not been verified. It's a huge mistake, and I'm shocked that the media continues to make these sorts of mistakes. Meanwhile, President Trump continues to struggle for a legal strategy on Michael Cohen. So Rudy Giuliani is still out there trying to play sort of offense for President Trump in the Michael Cohen investigation. He came out and he said that Jeff Sessions should end the Mueller investigation. He should presumably also end the Michael Cohen investigation. He says that all of this has gone too far. Giuliani is, of course, Trump's new lawyer, and here's what he had to say about the Mueller investigation, which he feels is a witch hunt.
Kim Jong-un impressed enough to be releasing 3 prisoners today, and I've got to go there, and Jay Sekulow and the Rasmus, we have to go there and prepare him for this silly deposition about a case in which he supposedly colluded with the Russians, but there's no evidence of that? I mean, everybody forgets the basis of the case is dead. Sessions should step in and close it.
Okay, now, here's the real problem. If Sessions, of course, steps in and closes the investigation, he's already recused himself from all the Trump-Russia stuff, so he'd have to end that recusal, step back in, and finish the investigation, or fire Rod Rosenstein, or he should go, presumably, and Rosenstein, and Mueller. All of this is not going to benefit President Trump. The only thing that can hurt President Trump about the Mueller investigation in any serious way is if Trump were to step in and fire Robert Mueller. Now, there are people who are proclaiming that Rudy Giuliani is just promoting a rip-off-the-Band-Aid strategy, that this thing can drag on for another year and a half, all the way through the 2020 election. So let's just rip off the Band-Aid, fire Mueller, there will be a blowback for 2 months, and then everybody will be over it. Maybe that's true, maybe it's not. I happen to think it's probably not true, because the James Comey thing is still haunting President Trump, and it's a year and a half after he fired James Comey. Well, it's about a year after he fired James Comey. So I just don't think that's going to go the way that Giuliani thinks that it's going to go. And Giuliani, it seems, has been speaking a little bit out of turn. So one of the big questions about Giuliani on Hannity the other night, so you recall Rudy Giuliani suggested on Sean Hannity's show that Trump knew about the $130,000 payoff to Stormy Daniels. And he suggested that Trump had done so in the run-up to the election, and Cohen had done so in the run-up to the election, which could create legal peril for President Trump. Well, President Trump has now responded to Rudy Giuliani's comments. And in a second, I'm going to show you what President Trump had to say about those comments, because it's pretty funny. But first, I want to say thanks to our sponsors over at Skillshare. So Skillshare is an online learning platform with over 20,000 classes in business, design, technology, and more. Look, you know that in 5 years, you probably won't be working the same job that you are now. You have to constantly be making your resume better in this market. People don't stick around at jobs the way your grandfather did, getting that gold watch. Instead, you're constantly looking to increase your income by broadening your skill set. Well, that's where Skillshare comes in. They have classes in everything. We're talking about 20,000 classes. People at Daily Wire are taking all sorts of these classes. I've taken classes in social media marketing and illustration now. Okay, you can take those classes. You can take them in creative writing, mobile photography, pretty much anything. They have an expert who's ready to teach you a class. These are 45-minute classes. They're very user-friendly. You can ask questions. It's interactive. It's really, really good. Again, Skillshare makes sure that you are constantly making your resume that much better. Join the millions of students already learning on Skillshare today with a special offer just for my listeners. You get 2 months of Skillshare for just 99 cents. So Skillshare is offering my listeners, again, 2 months of unlimited access to over 20,000 classes for just 99 cents. To sign up, go to Skillshare.com/Shapiro. That's Skillshare.com/Shapiro to start that 2 months now. Skillshare.com/Shapiro. Use that /Shapiro so they know we sent you. And again, there's a reason that people around the Daily Wire offices are using Skillshare. There's a reason I've used Skillshare to make my skills better. It really is tremendous, and the teachers are first rate. Skillshare.com/Shapiro for that special deal, 2 months of unlimited access to those 20,000 classes for just 99 cents. Once you've started, you're not going to want to stop learning. Okay, so President Trump has now responded to Rudy Giuliani's odd statement, and he says that Rudy is just sort of saying things. This is that new clip.
Rudy is a great guy, but he just started a day ago. So Rudy knows it's a witch hunt. He started yesterday. He'll get his facts straight. He's a great guy. But what he does is he feels it's a very bad thing for our country, and he happens to do it.
Okay, so Trump is throwing a little bit more chum in the water there by saying Rudy may not know what he's talking about. He may know what he's talking about. But the question is why Trump likes what Rudy is doing. And the answer might be that what Trump really likes from Rudy is he likes a guy on TV who is saying witch hunt over and over and over again. Now, it is my belief that this may, in fact, end up being a witch hunt, that this may, in fact, end up being nothing. There's new information out today that the prosecution of Paul Manafort may actually be falling apart, which is amazing. Like, if you can't prosecute Manafort for collusion, then I'm not sure how exactly you're going to prosecute anybody else. I mean, it's really amazing. So, according to the Washington Post, a federal judge in Virginia on Friday grilled lawyers from the Office of Special Counsel Robert Mueller about the motivations for bringing a bank and tax fraud case against former Trump campaign manager Paul Manafort. You don't really care about Mr. Manafort's bank fraud, Judge T.S. Ellis said during a morning hearing. You really care about getting information Mr. Manafort can give you that would reflect on Mr. Trump and lead to his prosecution or impeachment. I mean, boom, ouch. Manafort was seeking to have the bank and tax fraud charges against him dismissed in federal court in Alexandria, with his lawyers alleging that the crimes have nothing to do with the election or with President Trump. Ellis agreed. He made no immediate decision on the defense motion. He said even without such a connection, the special counsel may well have the authority to bring the charges, saying, I'm not saying it's illegitimate, but Manafort has also filed similar motions in the D.C. federal court where he faces charges of money laundering, making false statements, failing to follow lobbying disclosure laws, and working as an unregistered foreign agent. So he's pleading not guilty to all of these counts stemming from his work for a pro-Russian political boss in Ukraine. The longtime lobbyist has argued that Rod Rosenstein overstepped, giving the special counsel's office a blank check to go after Manafort in the first place. And it appears that the federal judge feels the same way. Again, we have seen very little evidence coming out from Robert Mueller about what exactly he has here. And the indictments that have come down do not lead me to believe that he's got a lot on President Trump, which is one of the reasons he wants to get President Trump in front of him to testify. Now, that is a separate question from whether Trump should fire Mueller. Listen, I know that the popular talk radio position is that Trump should fire Mueller and we should just, throw 4 sheets to the wind, everything will be fine, fire Mueller, it'll all be fine. I don't think that's right. I think that the president should let this play out. I think the president would be making a very large mistake if he were not to let this play out, because again, what the left wants is for President Trump to step on his own toes. They want President Trump to make a big boo-boo here by firing Mueller so that they can turn around and say the reason he fired Mueller is not because the investigation was going nowhere, it's because it was going somewhere. Instead, why doesn't Trump just let the investigation go nowhere? It's not damaging him. The polls right now have Trump at about 50%, according to Rasmussen. That's as high as he has ever been, and the economy continues to do well. I do not think all this stuff is really a threat to the Trump administration or to his viability as a 2020 candidate. Okay, so meanwhile, President Trump continues to be in hot water over the Michael Cohen Stormy Daniels payment, right? That's a separate case from the case regarding Robert Mueller. That case, again, I don't think it's going to do Trump a lot of damage, but it continues to kind of nibble at his credibility. Trump didn't have a lot of credibility to begin with when it came to matters sexual, but the media have been all over it. One of the things I find so amusing is the media are so confused why people on the right continue to support Trump's agenda when Trump obviously was lying about Stormy Daniels and paying her off. And the answer is, because we knew all of that, are we supposed to pretend that we are surprised in any serious way here? Are we really supposed to pretend that we are shocked and appalled by Trump's behavior? We've known about Trump the whole time, okay? You knew about Trump too. The media knew about Trump when they were making him the Apprentice guy on NBC. But they've decided this is their time to really undermine the credibility of President Trump as though he had tons of credibility to begin with. So, for example, a bunch of reporters went after Sarah Huckabee Sanders yesterday asking, how can you expect anyone to believe President Trump?
But can I ask you, when the president so often says things that turn out not to be true, when the president and the White House show what appears to be a blatant disregard for the truth, how are the American people to trust or believe what is said here or what is said by the president?
We give the very best information that we have at the time. I do that every single day and will continue to do that every day I'm in this position. I
don't know what that question's even supposed to mean. I mean, honestly, what is she supposed to say to that? Of course she was not informed the proper truth about Stormy Daniels because Trump was fibbing to her too. And that's not a shock. No one believes her when she was saying that Trump didn't know about Stormy Daniels. But the media think they've really got Sarah Huckabee Sanders now. Ooh, we've caught Sarah Huckabee Sanders in a lie. Again, no one cares. Here's Jim Acosta posturing on this issue as well.
You said on March 7th there was no knowledge of any payments from the president, and he's denied all of these allegations. Were you lying to us at the time, or were you in the dark?
The president has denied and continues to deny the underlying claim. And again, I've given the best information I had at the time.
Why can't you just answer yes or no whether you were in the dark? I think it's a fairly simple question whether you just
I think it's a fairly simple answer that I've given you actually several times now. I gave you the best information that I had, and I'm going to continue to do my best to do that every single day.
Okay, again, they're just going to keep asking her the same question over and over and over. And then when she kicks back, then they're going to suggest that Sarah Huckabee Sanders is a thug. Again, her job is to go out and dissemble on behalf of the president. Okay, that was also Jake Harney's job. Okay, that was the job of Robert Gibbs. Guess what being a press secretary is? Very often it is you going out there and lying on behalf of the president. Okay, let's not be naive, okay, about how politics works. Let's not be naive about how all of this operates. Okay, everyone knows when the president tells a fib, his press secretary is going to go out there and defend the fib. That is literally what they are paid to do. Okay, so, but again, the media have decided that they are hands clean in all of this. They can print as much nonsense and fake news as they want, and nobody is allowed to call their general credibility into question. But Sarah Huckabee Sanders, we're supposed to believe that she is totally undermining the credibility of a president who had very little to begin with. Here's Sarah Huckabee Sanders going after April Ryan. So April Ryan suggests that Sarah Huckabee Sanders was blindsided. Sanders kicks back, and then Ryan goes crazy.
Why didn't he talk to the White House press office about his impacting stellar statements about what was happening?
The White House press office wouldn't coordinate with the president's outside legal team on legal strategy.
You said yourself you were blindsided.
I actually didn't use that term.
Well, I said it, but you were blindsided from what you said.
Well, with all due respect, you actually don't know much about me in terms of what I feel and what I don't.
21 years to understand how this operates.
All right, I think we're good. Lolly, go ahead.
Okay, so, Sarah Huckabee Sanders is not being rude, but April Ryan thought she was being rude because, again, the only thing anyone in the media care about is how they look on camera. They should stop televising the press briefings. They really should, because all it turns into is a bunch of grandstanding political theater on behalf of these reporters. And April Ryan was happy to do that, right? She went on TV later and she talked about Sarah Huckabee Sanders. She said, Sarah Huckabee Sanders was very street with me. I don't even know what that means.
So she was blindsided. This was not a personal attack on her. And for her to say something like, you don't know me, that was very street. I know there's street politics here, but that was very street.
To say you don't know me is very street? Well, you don't know Sarah Huckabee Sanders all that well. Like, what? But again, it just demonstrates that what the media love best of all about President Trump is the constant controversy. While they proclaim that they don't like any of this and they just want to cover the news straight, they really don't. They want to report what they want to report about the Trump administration. And when Trump makes a boo-boo, they want to jump all over it. And then they want to make themselves the story. Because now the story is April Ryan and Jim Acosta. The story is not really the president lying to the American people and the American people not really caring, because we knew all of that to begin with. Okay, so before I go any further, and I have a lot to say about some weird sex stuff in just a second. Now, if that's not a pitch, I don't know what is. But before I get to any of that, first, I want to say thanks to our newest sponsors over at ExpressVPN. So, Facebook, as you may have noticed, has been in the news a lot, getting thrashed for letting third parties get your user data. There are lots of internet providers who are grabbing your user data. Verizon, Time Warner, all of these places can record a list of every website you visit, and they can legally give it to anyone. So if you're afraid of violations of privacy, if you are concerned about people taking your information and using it against you, if you are concerned about people aggregating data on you, well, this is why you need ExpressVPN. Okay, ExpressVPN allows you to privately and securely surf the internet without being tracked by anyone. You don't have to, like yesterday, literally yesterday, Twitter announced that some 350 million users had their passwords exposed generally. Okay, you can't trust these big companies to maintain your security. That's what ExpressVPN is for. So, set up on all my devices. It only takes a few minutes. ExpressVPN app runs seamlessly in the background to my desktop, laptop, smartphone, or tablet. It protects me while I'm browsing, streaming, downloading files, or emailing. My network data is now encrypted. The IP address is masked. It keeps my activity and my identity completely private. This is something that you need if you're just trying to protect your personal information. Using ExpressVPN, you can safely surf public Wi-Fi in Starbucks, hotels, or airports, places where you could have your financial data stolen, for example. This is what ExpressVPN is for. And for less than $7 a month, you can get the same ExpressVPN protection that I have been using. I feel a lot more comfortable. You know, as a public persona, I'm constantly scared that somebody is going to try to hack into my email, because I assume there are more people trying to hack into my email than any place else. And using public Wi-Fi to do it is one way to do it. Well, ExpressVPN ensures that that's not something I have to worry about anymore. Every ExpressVPN plan is covered by a risk-free 30-day money-back guarantee, so try it and see if it works for you. After you've experienced the privacy and safety that ExpressVPN gives, you're not going to want to go back to using the internet without it again. Take back your internet privacy today and go to expressvpn.com/Ben, and you can get 3 months for free. expressvpn.com/Ben. That is EXPRESSVPN.com/Ben. expressvpn.com/Ben for 3 months for free today. Again, you're user savvy. You know this. You're on the internet all the time. That's why you're listening to the show. Well, ExpressVPN ensures that you are safe while you're using the internet. Again, protect your internet and data with ExpressVPN right now. expressvpn.com/Ben lets them know that we sent you. Okay, so there's a very weird thing that people are now talking about online. It's something that they call incels. What in the world are incels, and why do they matter? Incels are involuntary celibates. Okay, in other words, people who want to have sex but are not, right? Which is to say, most of the population, I assume, right? But incels are involuntary celibates. The reason that they have become a thing is because last week, a couple of weeks ago, there's a 25-year-old Canadian killer who rammed his van into a crowd of people, killing 10 and injuring 15. And the killer had written a Facebook post stating that the incel rebellion has already begun, and all the Chads and Stacys, which I guess is some sort of slang for attractive people, would pay the price. So there have been a bunch of think pieces about how to solve the problem of involuntary celibacy. Point number one, I don't understand why involuntary celibacy is a problem. If you haven't earned somebody's love and affection enough for them to have sex with you, I don't understand why this is society's problem. But it just demonstrates that the victimhood mentality has taken over everyone in our society. You're a loser and you can't find somebody to marry you? Maybe it's because you ought to get your act together. Okay, maybe the reason you're involuntarily celibate is because you have not made enough of yourself to earn somebody else's love and affection. But when you live in a society where sex is believed to be owed, when you live in a society that's constantly promising that sex is right around the corner, casual sex is easy to get, it's not a problem, no one's ever going to require anything of you. Right? When you watch TV and everybody is jumping in and out of the sack with everybody else, it does lead to a mentality that suggests I am owed this thing, right? I am owed sex. Everyone's getting it except for me. Involuntary celibacy is obviously a societal problem. This is a very perverse view of sexuality. Ross Douthat at the New York Times has pointed out that for purposes of discussion, there are two types of incels. Okay, men who can't get sex as a general rule. It's usually men who are worried about involuntary celibacy, and people perceived by the left wing to be victimized by a society that has unfair standards of sexiness. So this would be people who are trans, who say that they can't have sex with the kind of people that they want to have sex with, because as trans people, society has set up rigid standards of sexuality, and people are falling prey to all of that. Well, Douthat suggests that the solution posed by those who see involuntary celibacy as a problem to be solved will be the redistribution of sex. That in the end, what we will end up doing is sponsoring people so that they can hire prostitutes, or we can develop new technology like sex robots so we can have equality of sex. You know, in the Bernie Sanders model, the top 1% of the 1% are having 99% of the sex, and we must redistribute the sex as well as the pudding. Right? This is the sort of move that Douthat sees coming with regard to involuntary celibacy. Now, we all rightly rebel at this idea because this idea is gross and stupid. It's not your responsibility to make sure that anybody else has sex, obviously, nor is it your responsibility to have sex with somebody just because they would like to have sex with you. This is idiotic. But the reason this has even become an issue, the reason there are now all these think pieces, a lot of think pieces in the last week about involuntary celibates and how we solve their problems, is because of this stupid victimization mentality with regard to sex. So I was what you would call a voluntary celibate, okay, until I was married. I was somebody who did not have sex until I was married. My wife had the same standard. The reason for that is because I felt that sex was an adjunct to commitment. Sex was something that you earned as an element of commitment. I earned the love of my wife. I earned the commitment of my wife. She earned my commitment. And then we are willing and happy to have lots of fantastic sex, right? That is the way that society used to work, is that celibacy was not considered some sort of terrible thing to be experiencing. It was something that was supposed to encourage you to better yourself and make yourself worthy of marriage, right? Conservatives have had the solution for a long time. A sexual morality that takes into account commitment. If we measure happiness by commitment rather than by amount and variety of sex, then the onus placed on us is to get someone else to commit to us. And we have a society right now that values sex above commitment, that says that the happiest possible life is the one where you're having the sex with the most people in the most positions, and that's what's going to make you the happiest. That's a lie, number one. Social science demonstrates that this is a lie. Promiscuity does not lead to happiness, it turns out. Sexual variety does not lead to happiness. Commitment tends to lead to happiness. But we're a commitment-phobic society and a sex-centric society, and that leads to an unhealthy focus on sex, and it leads to us seeing people who are not receiving this free and plentiful sex as victims of the society, as opposed to people who need to better themselves and therefore to earn commitment. Again, virginity should not be seen as something to be condemned. It's seen as a norm, not as a shortcoming, until you have earned somebody else's commitment. But that's not the way our society has viewed it. If sex is the goal of life, then we're going to fall directly into this trap about redistribution of sex and voluntary celibates being victims. Again, the reality is nobody owes you sex. Nobody owes you anything. Okay, you need to earn. Okay, and when I say you need to earn, I don't mean you got to be a guy who plays the game. You got to be a stud. That's not what I mean. What I mean is that if you actually want to have a happy life, what you need to do is make yourself worthy of the person with whom you would like to have sex, and that person needs to make themselves worthy of you as well. It means bettering yourself every way, physically, emotionally, spiritually. Become a better person. And it's really interesting. You know, you rarely see the guys who are complaining right now about involuntary celibacy. They're never complaining about involuntary lack of commitment, right? You never see the same guys who are talking about how they're not getting enough sex, just random sex. You never see them talking about, I've really been trying to get married for a really long time, and I've been unable to find women who are willing to marry me. Okay, that number is much, much smaller than the number of guys who are out there complaining about not getting the supposedly free and plentiful sex offered by society. Okay, well, we're making a generation of pathetic men. That's all that's happening here. We're creating a generation of pathetic humans, men in particular, who think that they are owed things instead of having to actually be gentlemen, be strong defenders of family, be prepared to sustain a household in order to participate in lovemaking activity. Meanwhile, speaking of people who are being made pathetic, it's not just exclusive to men, it's also happening to women. The lead at the Huffington Post right now, literally the lead, okay, the top of their enormous website is Wet Dreams, the Age of Fish Sex. I am not kidding you. And then there's a picture of a woman's feet and a fish. Okay, and here is the story. Okay, time for the easiest game. This is by Claire Fallon, who I have no clue who she is. All I know, she has the lead at Huffington Post, and she's crazy. So here is what she writes. She writes, time for the easiest game of, if you love this movie, read this book ever. If you love The Shape of Water, a movie about fish sex, you should definitely read The Pisces by Melissa Broder, a book about fish sex. The cover literally shows a woman in an amorous clinch with a fish. The novel actually tells the story of a woman who has a torrid love affair with a merman. And then she says, both the Pisces and Guillermo del Toro's Oscar-winning Shape of Water seem to have arrived at an inflection point for heterosexual relations, as some straight women have thrown up their hands in despair at the prospect of dealing with straight men. These men who grope us and talk down to us and consistently fail to clean the bathroom. We're supposed to make lives with them, let them touch us? No, you're not. You're supposed to find a good man and settle down with him. That was the idea. You shouldn't be having sex with fish, ladies. Okay, it turns out that going after the bass, right, nailing the salmon, that's not actually a good solution to you lacking the ability to find a man who is willing to commit. Okay, again, how about women focus on bettering themselves and men focus on bettering themselves, and both of these things lead toward commitment. Women woke up one day, says the Huffington Post, to find that their husbands voted for Donald Trump and their sons have been bleep posting on incel boards. Okay, just because your husband voted for Donald Trump doesn't mean that he's a bad human being. Again, this is so insane. So basically, you're going to opt to go after the whitefish instead of sleeping with your husband because he voted for Trump. Even before we heard the claims about Harvey Weinstein's history of sexual harassment and assault and the ensuing avalanche of horrifying Me Too allegations, we heard about our president grabbing women by the bleep, Bill Cosby feeding women roofies, and R. Kelly allegedly sexually exploiting young girls. So many straight men we have been forced to accept are bad to us and for us. Why would we take the enormous risk of loving one of them? And yet straight women do have desires. Cutting men out of our lives isn't a simple proposition. As satisfying as the concept of going Lysis Stratus until men get their house in order might be, that strategy also requires straight women to deny their sexual urges. The handsome prince of our imagination has been exposed as a dangerous fraud, but we still need some form of romantic hope and sexual release. One seductive yet impossible fantasy might be the romantic attention of a man who lacks the exhausting baggage of male entitlement. To find such fantastical being, women, at least in fiction, have turned to the sea. Okay, maybe the emasculation of men is leading men to become pathetic. And maybe men's expectation of sex without relation to commitment is making men pathetic, and it's making women pathetic, and it's making everybody pathetic. And maybe instead of turning men into something they are not, which both men and women are doing, we should acknowledge that masculine behavior is a useful and necessary component of life. Instead of emasculating men, you should expect men to be better, and men should expect themselves to be better. Women set the standard for men, and men set the standard for women. Okay, this is just the reality in human relations. Maybe that's not the way it should be. That's the way it is. When it comes to sexual relations, if you want to have sex with somebody of the opposite sex, you are setting your standards. That's just the way that it works. What that means is that women should expect men to be better. They should expect men to be better, but they should not expect men not to be men. Okay, men are creatures who are going to want sex. But you can also dictate to a man, ladies, what kind of man you would like to have sex with. Okay, it's up to you to determine what type of person you think is going to make a good husband. And suggesting that all men are R. Kelly or Donald Trump, or that if they voted for Donald Trump, they are Donald Trump, or that if they disagree with you about feminization of boys, that somehow they're going to be bad husbands, we're leading generations of men and women to be unhappy. That's all that's happening here. You have unhappy men who believe that the expectation of life is that they're going to have as much sex as they want, and unhappy women who are living in the expectation that men are going to be under their boot heel and not act like men at any point in real life. And it's just stupid. It's just stupid. And that's how you end up with fish sex on the front page of the Huffington Post and incels killing people in Canada. Just ridiculous. Okay. We're going to get to the mailbag in just one second, but for that, you have to go over to dailywire.com. So for $9.99 a month, you can get a subscription to dailywire.com. That means that you get the rest of this show live. You get the rest of Andrew Klavan's show live, the rest of Michael Knowles' show live. It means you get to be part of the mailbag and ask me the questions that you want answered. Also, if you get the annual subscription, you still get this. The Leftist Tears Hot or Cold Tumbler. You will enjoy it. You will love it. It is fantastic. Every element of it is just marvelous. Beyond all of that, I want you to go and subscribe right now, if you have not, to our feed over at iTunes or SoundCloud or YouTube. The reason being, because this Sunday, May 6th, we have a brand new edition of my podcast, a Sunday edition. It's the Ben Shapiro Show Sunday Special, in which I host weekly in-depth conversations with the nation's best thinkers on politics, news, culture, sports, everything in between. And the best part is for current subscribers to my show, because you won't even need to hit an extra button, it's just going to show up in your feed. And this week's episode is just fantastic. I can guarantee it's great. Okay, Jordan Peterson stops by, and it's awesome. It's really high-level intellectual stuff. I think that you'll love it, and I really hope that you enjoy the show. I think that it's going to be just terrific. We have a bunch of fantastic guests booked for the next few months. It's a blast. So check it out. Please subscribe right now and leave us a review. We always appreciate it. We are the largest, fastest-growing conservative podcast in the nation.